Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Database Performance Monitoring for Open Source Databases. Today's event is brought to you by SolarWinds and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is David Davis, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's special event. Before I introduce you to today's presenters, first off, I want you to know that we want this to be an educational event. We are going to have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the event. If you have questions throughout, please use the questions box there in the GoToWebinar control panel to ask all of your questions about open source database monitoring and the tools that are being presented on the event today. And we'll be doing our best to cover every one of those questions in the Q&A as best that we can. We will also have one prize announcement at the end of today's live event for an Amazon $300 gift card. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. Prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I want to introduce today's presenters. They are Mr. John Maxwell, Senior Product Marketing at SolarWinds, and Mr. Hansel Akers, Sales Engineering Manager at SolarWinds. John, Hansel, thank you so much for being on the event today.
Hi there, our pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, with that, I want to quickly cover what you'll learn on today's event. First off, you'll get an overview of SolarWinds end-to-end solutions. You'll learn about the expanding role of database performance management beyond the DBA. You'll find out how to monitor the overall health of both your system as well your systems as well as your databases, and the importance of measuring before and after performance of code deployments. Finally, you'll see the solution in action with a live demo. We've got a cool live demo lined up, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. And now I'm excited to hand it over to our first presenter. John, I'll hand over controls to you.
Great, thanks. So good afternoon, good evening, depending on where all of you are from. Again, my name is John Maxwell. I'm with SolarWinds, Product Marketing Manager for our database products. Today we're focusing on our Database Performance Monitor product, which focuses on open source and NoSQL databases. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to give you kind of an overview of SolarWinds, give you a high-level kind of architectural view of the product, and then my partner in crime here, Hansel, I'll let him introduce himself. We'll go through a detailed live demo of the product, and then we'll open up to Q&A.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, John, for the warm intro. So I manage a sales engineering team here for Database Performance Monitor, formerly Vivid Cortex, before the acquisition, for over a year now. So I have a team of a bunch of really impressive sales engineers. But yeah, I manage that team and I make sure that our prospects, our customers, learn the product, learn how to use the product and find value in the product. So, work with just about every customer and prospect that we interact with.
Great. So before we get started, we kind of wanted to learn a little bit about our audience. So Dave, why don't you put up that poll so we can learn a little bit about your background and what databases you're using.
Absolutely, yeah. I want to call everyone's attention to the poll on the screen there. The question is, what open source databases do you currently run? And this is a multi-select question. So if you are running multiple open source databases, of course, you can select multiple there. If you're not running any open source databases today, then feel free to simply just not answer the question. And we will be sharing the results of this poll with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers on the event today. So it looks like we've got a good percentage of responses so far. Let's just get a few more. All right, excellent. Thank you everyone who responded to the poll. Let me go ahead now and share the results. And it looks like 82% are using MySQL, followed by 44% using Postgres, 6% with Redis, and 14% MongoDB. John, what's your take on that?
So it doesn't surprise us because this really kind of mirrors our customer base. I mean, MySQL across both of our database products is very popular. It's for the product we're talking about today, it's actually the #1 most used database. Postgres, though, we're seeing a lot of interest in Postgres, the various flavors, whether it be hosted or on-prem. As probably most of you know, if you've ever looked at some of the sites that measure popularity of databases, MySQL recently surpassed SQL Server in popularity, and Postgres really for the past 5 years has been having phenomenal growth. Uh, this is the 14% of MongoDB is great to see. That's a little higher than what we've seen in our customer base, and good to see the Redis users there. I have to admit, I put the Vitesse in there because that is a new platform that works with MySQL that we'll be adding to the product. But good feedback, and when Hansel gets into the demo, he'll be showing you both examples of the product in MySQL, Postgres, and even MongoDB environment. So thank you for participating in that to everyone. So I wanted to just, sometimes when we do these, people are not, especially in the database performance management world, are not familiar with SolarWinds. We are probably more known in the network space because according to IDC, we are the #1 software vendor and network performance management and monitoring. We just celebrated last year our 20-year anniversary. Global company headquartered here in Austin with approaching 300,000 customers. We have a very vibrant user community that uses a form called THWACK, THWACK.com. If you want to peruse that, we have a lot of data that our customers and we share with them. SolarWinds is focused on really ITOM, hybrid IT operations management. This is a kind of we have roughly 70 products in our portfolio. So this is a graphical way of displaying where our solutions fall into various spaces. You can see we span, on-premises, traditional data centers, whether those various areas are, virtualized, or into hosted and public cloud environments. And you can see kind of going from top to bottom, we have application management, we have a whole suite of solutions, including kind of our flagship product in that space called AppOptics. Database performance, we have our database performance monitor that we're talking about today, along with another product, database performance analyzer, that focuses more on traditional databases like Oracle SQL Server. Broad solutions in infrastructure management. We have a very large customer base in server management with our server and application monitor solution, and then get into storage monitoring, and of course network management, where we have our biggest space. We've been growing into the ITSM space with our help desk solution, and we've been expanding into the IT security operations space with products that do everything from tracking changes or possible things happening in your network environment that you want to know about. So let's get into the topic at hand, which is open source and NoSQL performance monitoring. Before I get into kind of the how the product works, what it is, I wanted to talk, and then you'll hear myself and Hansel saying, using the term DPM. It's just an acronym for Database Performance Monitor. But I wanted to touch on security because DPM is a SaaS-based product. It is SOC 2 certified, built on a framework that meets ISO standards. We have role-based access control, single sign-on, and we're use SAML integration to give our customers the ability to provision, onboard, and revoke users. So that's something we always like to talk about up top. And if you have any other questions about security, and Hansel will go over this in detail, but I know that sometimes security is a question that people have with a SaaS-based solution, and we have all the bases covered there. So DPM is, or Database Performance Monitor is a SaaS-based platform, which makes it very easy to install and really facilitate cross-functional teams usage. And one of the things that's interesting with our customer base with this product is a lot of these customers have adopted what I call a development to deployment methodology for building performance into the product. So they're using DPM for when they are developing the product, when they go into Q&A, test, and then roll it out into production. So DPM is not your just a DBA only tool. We see a lot of SREs, application developers using the product. I mean, some of our larger customers allow hundreds of their developers to use the product, so they can, test, kind of do before and after analysis of when they deploy code or roll out a new application. For all instances, DPM pulls data from a host by deploying a set of agents. DPM's discovery looks for specific processes that are listening for TCP connections. Additional agents will run depending on the database instances the system finds. We have both a metrics agent and a query agent for each database type that we support. Our agents are native binaries for the platform. Today we support Linux, FreeBSD, and Windows running on 64-bit x86 processors. So again, a very simple yet elegant architecture. In the DPM cloud, we're doing all the heavy lifting, crunching all the data, doing the analytics and so forth. The product itself gives you a broad view into both your system and database health, which is important because we have customers that are using this product that they want to know the availability of the database, the availability of the system, the health of the system, the database. So we're providing that in real time down to the second granularity. So this gives you an easy way to get to the root cause of any problems. And when Hansel walks you through the demo, you'll see what I'm talking about as far as giving you that real-time status of the health. And you can go in and filter on, you only want to look at your Postgres systems or a specific system or your MySQL, that type of thing. One of the most interesting features in the product that I think is really brilliant, and it really helps people who do new code deployments, is the time comparison. So you can go in and look at a query or a system from one span of time to now, and see if things have changed, if they've gotten better for worse. In addition to the system health, we have various ways to look at query analysis. You can go in and look, basically find your worst performing queries per database, or you can go in and do analysis on a specific query. And this is where it gets into play with, the SREs, the DevOps type people looking at, okay, this is something new that we rolled in production, or we have in QA and we want to do specific analysis of it. And of course, we have alerting. So if something goes down or something's amiss, you'll get notified. We have formal integration into various alerting tools, including some really nice integration with Slack, where you can even embed some of our data from the product into Slack to share with team members. And another feature I really love in the product is the customizable dashboards. So you can create views of databases or systems based on how you want to see it. As I mentioned, we're focused on the open source database market. So these are the databases we support today. Mongo, which we saw that 14% of you on today's webcast have. Postgres, 42% of you have. MySQL, 82%. We will also support MariaDB with MySQL. We support Aurora along with these databases like Postgres and MySQL running in RDS. So it's both support for Aurora and RDS, and then of course Redis. So with that, just give you a quick overview of who SolarWinds is and what we do. Quick kind of architectural overview of DPM, and with that, I'd like to hand it over to Hansel, who will go through a live demo of the product. So Hansel.
Great. Thanks for that, John. John, can you confirm that you're able to see my screen? I just want to make sure before we continue here where everyone's able to see this.
Yes, we can see. Looks good.
Great. So yeah, just to provide some context before we drill into the demo here, this is a demo environment we have set up. You're looking at the DPM app. You can see we are currently filtered on all of our hosts. So we're actually looking at 55 of 55 databases. And that's actually a combination of MySQL, Postgres, and MongoDB. And as John mentioned, we do support Redis. This is actually a mixture here of MySQL and Postgres hosted both locally and in the cloud. So quite a few different database types in here and in hosting solutions. We're looking at the past hour of execution time. We can use this slider here to get custom and go up to 30 days. We also can get very, very custom and granular here. So say you're paged in the middle of the night, we can make sure to specify that exact time and time range that you want to drill into. But I do want to call out by default, we'll house data for 13 months. So if you're looking to understand how your data tier is changing over time, you have the historical data to do so. So we are looking at our profiler page. Our profiler page is going to rank, sort, and filter every query that's running across all of our selected instances. So you can see, for instance, this insert statement into our guest book table is accounting for about 29% of our total runtime and is our most time-consuming query across all of our hosts, all 55 in the past hour. So that's sort of how that's read and organized. And in the past hour, that's actually 9 hours of wall clock time. What the profiler allows you to do is not only quickly identify my queries that are consuming the most time, but also my longest running queries quickly, just by using this, this column header to sort, as well as my high volume queries. So, those fast and frequent, something that's running at 115 milliseconds on average over the past hour, but running 150,000 times can account for a significant amount of time consumption. In this case, about 15.4% of total runtime. So it really gives you the opportunity here, the profile, to organize your workload, identify outliers, and drill in that way. So what I'll do now is actually, as you probably can tell, as I'm hovering around here, we have clickable links. So what I'll do is I will actually select any of these, and I'm actually going to click our most time-consuming query here, where we can look at a lot of additional metrics specific to the query I've selected. So if I scroll down a little bit, you see we're looking at that insert statement. We have performance metrics that we saw on that first page on the profiler, so we can understand specific to this query how it's performing. We'll also break it down per host. So if this is running across multiple nodes, primaries, secondaries, whatever that may be, we'll allow you here to correlate, volume and total time to see how that's lining up. Potentially identify specific nodes that are consuming more time as opposed to others, and try to identify why. For instance, if this API 1 here, this MySQL host is consuming more time, I can specifically filter on this, and then all my information will reflect that specifically. So I'll remove the filter here. I did want to quickly show, if you see, we're charting this metric in blue here, total time. But on top of it, overlaying that graph are these circles or bubbles with the ellipsis on some of them. If I select any of these are sample executions that we've been able to capture as well. So you can see we now have some sample text. In this instance, we have a Nick hello world here. And then as I scroll down a little bit further, we'll get a lot of additional information about that specific sample execution that I've selected. So in this instance, this execution is running across our Postgres schema. The Postgres user executed it. We can see the IP where it's coming from. We can see how long this specific execution took, so 1.17 minutes. And then if it's an explainable query, we'll also provide an explain plan. So you can quickly look at it in tabular form as well as raw JSON. So you can look at things like the scan that took place, the amount of rows that were affected, how taxing was it on the system. But all that information is here provided for every sample execution that we capture. So I'll jump back to our profiler. And I wanted to quickly show, and it's something that John hinted at earlier in the conversation, is the ability to understand the impact that change being introduced in your environment has across your data tier. So we have this feature here called compare time ranges. And what I can do is, basically stack different time ranges on top of each other. So in this specific example we're giving, I can look at the most recent hour as my global filter and look at the previous hour. So if we're doing something like a database configuration change, maybe something like adding an index, which we'll get into in a little bit here as well, or a very, very common use case is an app deployment that may be taking place. So we can actually overlay events here, as well as custom events like this app deployment event we've created, to actually visualize exactly where it takes place. So we're now looking at my most recent hour here in green, or that teal on the top chart. Underneath it would be that previous hour in gray, and then we look at relative change as a time consumption metric. So we can see specifically when that app deployment took place as that vertical purple dotted line. We can also see queries that are dropping off and some that are picking up. So we can be confident that that took place right when the app deployment took place. So what I'll do is actually take this a step further. I want to zoom in on this spark line. I want to look at that specific time range from when the app deployment took place. It looks like it took place about 3 p.m. Eastern. And what I'll do is I'm actually going to navigate to our queries page, where I can take this even a step further here and identify any new queries that have been introduced since that app deployment took place. So for instance, I can identify this select that was introduced 22 minutes ago, and I can actually follow that same sort of workflow where I can identify sample executions, and I can try to be a little proactive in how I optimize these. And you'll see we actually show one of them here, but we do a lot of best practice recommendations down to the query level. So I can look at these queries. You can see they're actually marked red up here, and that means that there's either errors, warnings, failed best practices, opportunities for us to improve this query. And we'll actually show that down to the query level. So we have a custom built query parser where we capture that sample text, we run it through, we find opportunities for improvement for you. And quickly, I'll jump to our health page here as well. I wanted to show how we sort of aggregate that in a easy to use screen here. So if we're looking at MySQL specifically, we have a lot of configuration recommendations. So not just query level recommendations, but also database engine config recommendations and database internals. And then as I mentioned, those query rules. So it's sort of a nice aggregate view here. It works well as a moving dashboard if you're making changes, migrating, version upgrades. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement here. If you're making tweaks, even something as small tweaks, you can jump in here and see, is anything falling off? Do I see any new recommendations here where I can quickly improve my database? And then just to call out some of the other ones here. So we have for MongoDB, we have some index analysis. We'll identify not only those queries that are missing indexes for all database types we support, but we'll also identify in Mongo queries that could benefit from additional indexing. So you can see that's one of the categories here. And then also for everything, security recommendations. So a lot of different opportunities here to jump in, find quick opportunities for improvement, make them, see if it's resulting in some improvement across your database, but also works extremely well as kind of a moving dashboard. I'm making changes. Let's see what I'm being suggested to do to improve my database entirely. Another thing that John mentioned, and I think is worth showing on this demo, are customizable dashboards and charts. So if we capture the metric here, we're able to chart it. You can see we already have a lot of pre-baked. So you install our agent, and basically we'll start generating these dashboards and charts for you. You can see also that app deployment is sticky. So as I bounce around to different pages in the app, we'll be able to understand exactly how it's contributing to any sort of change that's being introduced across not only my queries, but also different resource metrics. So we can look and see exactly how that's contributing here. And then the one last thing I wanted to quickly show here, because I know we want to leave some time for some questions that may come over, is our Explorer page. What our Explorer page does is takes Profiler, in the Profiler in the way that we organize queries by total time, count, average latency, some of those metrics we looked at. We can also compare time ranges here for not only our workload, but also our resource metrics. And what we can do is start to stack charts and understand how resource metrics are contributing to how my queries are performing, as well as vice versa. So we can look at maybe a spike in CPU and try to identify a specific query that may be responsible. So as you see, as I start removing some of these specific queries from the charts, I start to remove some of the noise and identify a spike that may be contributing to a spike that we see. And we can really start to correlate some of those metrics here using the Explorer. So that leaves us with about 5 minutes. I'll actually pass it back over here for some Q&A, so we can answer some of the questions that are coming over.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That's a great demo. So I took the liberty of answering some of the questions that were, I would say, the simple ones. So Hansel, I wanted to save the hard ones for you. David, why don't you go through some of the questions that we have teed up here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great demo, Hansel. Thank you very much. While we do this Q&A session, I want to bring up a poll for everyone in the audience. It's on the screen right now. It says, would you like pricing information or would you like to schedule a product demo with a SolarWinds engineer? So we'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. Let's see, first question that came in, they're asking if this would work with Aurora MySQL since it's managed by AWS. Is that possible?
It is very good question. So we have a very flexible installation of our agent. We can actually install, and I think John was hinting at this a little bit earlier, but we can install on the specific server we want to monitor or database. We can install off of it. We can even install it in a container if you want to use some sort of like sidecar approach. So we can. What we do is we'd install it alongside Aurora in the same VPC. And you can use a single agent actually to monitor multiple Aurora nodes. But we rely on performance schema being enabled if it's a Aurora MySQL, if it's Aurora Postgres PG stat statements. So we do have ways. We rely on the existing informational views. We query those tables to pull in all of our metrics.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Another question here, Peter is asking, basically, are there other statistics available in DPM, for example, host or operating system, or what other stats might be possible?
Yes, there are. And sorry I didn't get to show everything here, but we do pull in operating system metrics. We actually have a dedicated plugin that goes along with the agent install. So if we're installing on host, or what we consider, installing directly on the database we want to monitor, we actually sniff the wire. We have an operating system plugin to pull in all those metrics. And then if you're hosted on like a managed solution, like RDS and Aurora come to mind, we also have a CloudWatch integration. So instead of kind of jumping in between all of your Aurora nodes or all of your RDS instances to look at CloudWatch specific to that instance, you can pull in CloudWatch from all of those instances, all of those nodes into a single environment here, and view them across your entire infrastructure and your entire data tier and all your databases. So a bunch of different ways we pull in those metrics and start to understand and correlate them across our workload.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Let's see, another question here. They're asking about data retention. You talked about down to 1 second granularity, but what other archiving or data retention options are available? What can you tell us about that?
So a lot of data retention, we can kind of customize that pretty easily here. So by default, I mentioned 13 months. That's what everyone's going to get. So as soon as you get up and running, you'll start generating that historical data, and it will go the whole way back for 13 months. But kind of at a high level, our retention is 3 days at 1 second granularity or 1 second resolution. You're going to get 30 days at 1 minute resolution, and then that remaining time period, which is 1,096 days at 10-minute resolution. But it is customizable, not only the granularity and resolution, but also how long we house that data. So we have folks that are have it customizable to 3 years and beyond to adhere to some of their sensitive data standards. So very, very customizable.
Very nice, very nice. A lot of options there. Well, I know we're going to talk about a special URL that you all have that we can go and get more information, but one of the questions that came in here, they're asking, what do I have to install like on premises? Is this an application I install, or is this something that runs in a hosted environment?
Yep, so it is an agent-based install. As I mentioned, you can install it a bunch of different ways. We can actually configure what's being sent to our API. So when you do log into the app, it is a web-based UI. We house the data that is sent. And the reason I bring that up is, if you're adhering to sensitive data standards like HIPAA, like PCI compliance, you have the ability to customize exactly what gets sent. So, since that agent's living in your environment, that's actually where we strip all of that sensitive information. So you install it, you say, I want to only capture metadata, which means we'll strip all the query text associated with sample executions. We'll still provide you the metadata. We'll still provide you explain plans, but we'll make sure we strip that at your level in your environment so that it never hits the DPM API. So a lot of ways to do that, but it is an agent-based install with a web-based UI.
Okay, very nice. I'm going to go ahead and take the URL that's on the screen right there and paste it in the chat box for everyone in the audience. The URL is solarwinds.com/database performance monitor. You can simply click on that URL. You don't have to try to write it down from the slide that you see there on the screen. John, I wanted to ask you, if people go to this URL, what's the next step? What's SolarWinds going to help them do to see this solution in action?
Yeah, so we have a lot of data here, resources that go into kind of each section of the product in even more detail, and we have dedicated sections on MySQL if you're just interested in MySQL or Postgres. And so a lot of resources there. You can start a trial of the product. So if you want to do that, you can. I would probably say most people should probably just click on the request demo, because that way you can get someone, Hansel or someone from his team to, give you a customized demo. And then if you want from that, can start a trial with them. So it might, make it a little easier process to have, someone from the sales engineering team to help you go through that. I have answered quite a few questions about people asking about SQL Server support. And I briefly mentioned at the beginning, we have another product called Database Performance Analyzer. And that is a on-prem solution that supports SQL Server, Oracle, and 5 other platforms. And that product is part of our Orion architecture here at SolarWinds that are server and networking products. With DPM, we're really focused on, via SaaS solution, really the open source customer, again, kind of get into the beyond the DBA with the SREs, the DevOps, app dev. So just for you that they're asking about SQL Server, we have another solution that focuses on the more traditional databases.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, we answered a lot of questions. I really love the live demo. I'm sure the audience did as well. I know we wanted to keep this a fast-paced, relatively short demo-focused event. So I think we've covered all the questions. Before we go, I want to announce the winner of today's Amazon $300 gift card. That's going to Brian Fortin of California. Congratulations, Brian Fortin of California. John and Hansel, excellent webinar. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
For more information on the SolarWinds Database Performance Monitor, visit the URL that you see there in the chat box that you see on the screen. Also, check out the handout that's available for download there in your audience console. Visit solarwinds.com for more information. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. Have a great day. Bye-bye.